All right, July, oh, July 3rd. I forgot to put the microphone in. We're just gonna go with it. So, back to story time. So, the last segment of story time was about how basically the time period before the chef that I'm talking about's restaurant opened. So I'm calling it holdover job and private events. And then this is when the restaurant actually opened. I think it opened in like November, December sometime. Forget if it was like 2016 or 2015, something like that. Anyways, these are stories that happened during the restaurant being open, and there's not that many stories. Just most of it summed up in I went in, I did work, I got yelled at, I got kicked out. And that was maybe 1/3 of all of the days in the beginning. Later on, I never got kicked out and all that stuff, but that will be covered in this section. So I worked over there for about a year and a half, and then no, maybe 1 year, and then they sent me to Maui to help them open their other restaurant, and then I came back and I worked for about 6 months or something like that, and then I left to open my own restaurant. So we'll just start right over here. So this was when he used to kick me out all the time. Sometimes instead of kicking me out, he would say something like, go scrub the floor drains, right? So, and the floor drains, they're under all of the sinks. So every time you wash your hand or you pour pork blood down or anything dirty, basically everything goes into the hand sink, which goes into the floor drains. That's a hand sink one, and then there's one by the dish pits, which is like the dish machine, and basically anything that goes down a water drain ends up in the floor drains. They're the drains that are in the floor. So sometimes instead of just kicking me out, he would say, go scrub the floor drains or something like that. And I'm just gonna use this specific one as an example. I did something, he said, go scrub the floor drains. I said, okay. I go get soap, I do the whole thing, I get a piece of cardboard, I put it down so I can put my knees on the cardboard, and then gloves on, and then I scrub the floor drain just with a green scrubber, go all around, and then rinse it with some water, and then you go do the next. That's it. So it's not really like, I didn't hate doing it or anything because it's cleaning. You have to do that. So just who does it, that's up to interpretation, but he made me do it because I messed something up. Oh, he used to always yell at me because he was comfortable yelling at me knowing that I wouldn't quit. He never yelled at anyone else aggressively in the beginning because he hasn't really worked with them before. So if somebody else messed something up, he would just bottle it up, and then when I'm over there just making this little thing that he thinks is a mistake, he'll just like blow up because he had to hold it in for all these other cooks that he hasn't worked with for a while. So it was kind of like a funnel of his anger just going into me because I worked with him for a while before already. So one day he told me to scrub the floor drains. I did it, and then I finished, and I went back to work like normal. And then the next day, something happened, and then he said, go scrub the floor drains. And I'm like, okay. And then I go look at all the floor drains first. They're already clean because I just did them the day before. You can't make the floor drains that dirty in one day. So I look at it for like 30 seconds. I look at all of them, and I just go back to work. And then he comes up to me, and he always has to yell loud enough for everyone in the kitchen to hear to assert his dominance. So he yelled at me again. He was like, I thought I fucking told you to go clean the floor drains. And I was like, Chef, they're clean already. Yeah. So they're clean already because I cleaned them the day before. That's the floor drain story. So this one's not really a story, but I'll just do this one because this one's a longer story. We'll save that for another day. Not really a story, but everyone was always really busy, or everyone always perceived themselves to be really busy, that they didn't have time to do things, because the whole day everyone just like freaking out, trying to get their work done and head down and all that stuff. So I'm a believer that you fit the amount of work that you have into how many hours you have to do it. So if I had, let's say, 20 units of work, I would spread it out amongst the whole 8-hour shift or something like that. And I think that's what a lot of people did, and they appeared to be busy, but like if they could get stuff done on a slow day and they could get stuff done on a busy day, why not just move the same speed on the slow day as a busy day, and then you have extra time to do other things, because you don't get paid extra to do extra work. So once a week, dry goods would come in, and nobody except the sous chef would bring all the stuff up. And whenever I was working, I was always looking to see like how people work and who's a good cook, because I was looking at all the other cooks as like competition. So I would always watch to see who like they actually did a lot of work. And it always, yeah, it always seemed like everyone's moving slower than they could have, or they just didn't want to do extra work. But the sous chef, I know he took on a big workload by default, because the high level chefs, like the executive chefs, aren't gonna do the manual labor, and then all of these line cooks were too busy to do work or extra work. So just by default, he's a good sous chef. He just put his head down and got everything done. That's actually two of these wrapped up in one. But I got to a point where I could do all my work, and then I could help the cooks around me, and then if they're good, then I would try to take more stuff off the sous chef's plate. So there's this story, and then the dry goods, it would come in like once a week, and it would be like maybe 300 to 500 pounds of stuff you had to haul up this flight of stairs and then put in the storage room. And yeah, just over time, I just took it on as like, oh, dry goods are here, I'm gonna do it. It's my job now. And that was one thing that I realized makes a good manager, is when they appreciate and acknowledge that you're doing extra work, period. But also because I think they kind of acknowledge it because it's work that they would have done if you didn't do it. So, yeah, that's a lesson in management. If somebody goes the extra mile to do something that you would have done if they didn't do it, you should appreciate them for doing it. How much time we got? A minute. So I'll tell a parking story. In Chinatown, the parking's horrible. You can't find street parking, and it's like sketchy and all that stuff. So I specifically learned how to drive a motorcycle just to have free parking. If you wanted a monthly pass, and it's not like you could just walk in there and buy it, it would be like $140 per month, and there was a wait list on it, so you wouldn't be able to do it. And it was kind of, so parking is horrible, and I didn't want to take the bus and all that. So like 6 months before the restaurant opened, I made a plan. I was like, I'm gonna learn how to drive a motorcycle, and I'm gonna take the class and all that stuff. But I actually failed the written test like 5 or 6 times, and you had to wait a week every time, a week or two every time before you took the next test. And the reason I kept failing was because I went on the internet and I googled motorcycle test Hawaii, and then all these online classes would pop up that are just generalized for the whole US. and I studied all of them, and I would do really well on all of them, and I would use the same answers on the test, and I would fail, and I'm like, what? And I studied some more, and then I'd fail again. I was like, what's going on here? And then after failing like 3 times, I was like, I'm not gonna study. I'm just gonna answer these questions with common sense. And then I did a lot better, but I was like 1% under. It's kind of a recurring thing that I fail things by 1%. But you know, the next one, then I finally passed. But I learned how to drive a motorcycle. I took the class, and it was actually, I was the worst person in the class because I kept stalling out because I didn't know anything about driving a motorcycle. But it was like you have to release the clutch but not do it too fast while you're gassing it, and you have to do all that stuff. But when we had the class, I was the worst student. I stalled out the most and all that stuff. I think I'm a slow learner up front, but my capacity to learn a lot is really high because I ended up being a pretty decent motorcycle driver, I would say, as far as like the whole thing. So the 3 days that we're taking the like practicing, it was like storming and dumping rain. So like not even like drizzling, it was just like full on storm, and we took the class and we did it anyways because we only had 3 days to take it, and there was no excuse. You have to learn how to drive even if it's raining. So it was kind of miserable because it would rain and then the sun would come out, and then you're like hot and moist and damp, and then it would start raining again. You're like, oh yes, it's raining again. So you know, I learned how to drive a motorcycle just to have free parking.